Shortly as they arrived on the 7th of August, they were told they'd soon be returned, back to France from the shores they'd just left. These people were told by British border officials of a possible imminent departure hours after arriving in the UK. And now Sky News understands that could happen as soon as this week.
The lesson is that by cooperating with our partners, France, rather than rowing with them, we are able to deliver. So I hope the flights will start as quickly as possible. I don't know the exact...
Starmer's Indian visa standoff. Before we dive in, if you're tired of the mainstream media's sanitized take on British politics, hit that subscribe button. Because here at UK Connors, we don't do spin. We do the truth. Right then, let's talk about something that should have every British voter sitting up in their chair. Keir Starmer has just told India no more visas. And given that nearly 1 million Indian nationals have arrived on our shores in just 5 years, you'd think this would be front-page news everywhere. But here's the thing. It's not quite the victory lap some are making it out to be. Picture this. The Prime Minister boards a British Airways flight to Mumbai. Not alone, mind you. He's got 125 business leaders and university vice-chancellors in tow. That's right, over 100 of Britain's so-called elite, jetting off to ink a trade deal. And the very first question the press corps throws at him? More visas for Indian workers and students. His answer? Not part of the plan. Sound decisive, doesn't it? Almost Thatcher-esque in its brevity. But hold on, because when you peel back the layers of this particular onion, things get rather more complicated. Between 2021 and the end of 2024, India became the single largest source of migration to the United Kingdom. 850,000 Indian nationals arrived during that period. That's not a typo. Nearly 1 million people in under 4 years. And thousands more have continued flooding in through 2025. To put that into perspective, that's roughly the population of Leeds arriving on our doorstep. And yet, when Starmer stands there saying visas aren't part of the plan, he's technically not lying. Because a free trade deal signed with Narendra Modi back in July didn't involve substantial visa changes. It didn't need to. The floodgates were already open. Now here's where it gets properly interesting. The government is desperately trying to look tough on migration because Reform UK is breathing down their necks like a pack of particularly motivated hounds. Nigel Farage's lot would form the next government if an election were held tomorrow. Let that sink in for a moment. Reform's entire platform hinges on reversing what they brilliantly termed the Boris wave, that spectacular surge in legal migration under Boris Johnson and Priti Patel that saw numbers hit nearly 1 million a year. Mass deportations, they promise. A complete reversal of fortune. And Labour knows they cannot afford to look soft on this issue. Not now. Not ever. So Starmer plays his cards carefully. He bats away call for more high-skilled worker visas with all the charm of a man who's done his homework. But then, almost in the same breath, he defends dragging a gaggle of university vice-chancellors halfway across the world. Why are they there? To export British education to India. To build campuses, establish partnerships, create what he calls a fantastic opportunity. And here's the delicious irony. Universities are absolutely gagging for Indian students because foreign tuition fees now account for a quarter of all university income. Back in 1995, it was a measly 5%. The sector is addicted to international students, and India represents a gold mine. 70 million university places needed there by 2035. That's not just an opportunity. That's a lifeline for cash-strapped British institutions. But let's address the elephant in the room, shall we? Many of these students brought relatives with them. Some use the student visa route as a backdoor into Britain, later overstaying or claiming asylum. It's a system that was ripe for exploitation, and successive governments turned a blind eye because the money was simply too good to refuse. Now, to the government's credit, they've introduced stricter criteria. Sponsored study visas fell by 31% between 2023 and 2024. Progress, one might argue. But when your vice-chancellors are simultaneously plotting expansion into India, what message does it actually send? And then there's the deportation question. Starmer was asked whether Britain might refuse visas to countries that won't take back their own deportees. His response? We're looking at whether there should be a link between visas and returns agreements. Classic political fence-sitting dressed up as careful consideration. But with India, he assures us it's a non-issue. They've got a returns agreement that's operating really well. 6,300 people return already, a 55% increase. Jolly good show all around. Except this raises another rather awkward question. If we're deporting thousands of Indian nationals while simultaneously facilitating their arrival in droves, what exactly is the net benefit here? This is a game, isn't it? The political theatre that passes for immigration policy in modern Britain. Starmer stands firm, says no to more visas, looks tough for the cameras. Meanwhile, the structural incentives that drove nearly 1 million Indians to Britain over 5 years remain fundamentally unchanged. Universities still need the cash. Businesses still want the workers. And the government still wants that free trade agreement to look like an unqualified success. So nothing changes, but everything looks different. And let's not forget the broader context. Legal migration exploded under the Conservatives. They talked tough, implemented points-based systems, promised Australian-style controls, and then proceeded to oversee record-breaking numbers. Now Labour inherits this mess and finds itself trapped between economic necessity and political survival. They need growth. Universities need money. Businesses need workers. But voters need to believe someone is actually in control of Britain's borders. It's a quadruple bind with no easy answers. The reform surge isn't happening in a vacuum. People feel betrayed. They were promised control. They were told Brexit meant taking back sovereignty over who comes into this country. Instead, they watched as visa numbers soared to levels that made pre-Brexit migration look quaint by comparison. And now Starmer, who built his reputation on forensic competence, is trying to square an impossible circle. Be tough on numbers without destroying the sectors that rely on those numbers. Look decisive without actually changing the fundamentals. It's political tightrope walking at its finest. So when the Prime Minister says more visas aren't part of the plan, believe him, they don't need to be. The architecture for mass migration is already firmly in place. The universities have their business model. The employers have their supply chain. And the government has its plausible deniability. This is what modern Britain looks like. A nation where 850,000 people from a single country can arrive in less than 4 years, and the political class treats it as an administrative detail rather than a seismic demographic shift. Make no mistake, this matters. Because when voters see their Prime Minister flying off to Mumbai with Britain's business elite whilst reform promises mass deportations and actual change, they're going to ask themselves a very simple question. Who's actually listening to us? Who's taking our concerns seriously? And if the answer increasingly looks like Nigel Farage rather than Sir Keir Starmer, we shouldn't be remotely surprised. The India visa question isn't really about India at all. It's about whether Britain has any coherent immigration policy beyond responding to economic pressures and political polls. It's about whether words like control and sovereignty still mean anything, or whether they've been hollowed out into empty rhetoric. And it's about whether the British people will accept being told one thing whilst watching something entirely different unfold before their eyes. That's the story. Not the one Starmer wants to tell, but the one that's actually happening. And if UK Connors is going to be worth your time, it's because we're going to keep telling you what's really going on, not what the politicians want you to believe. Subscribe if you want more of this, because British politics is only getting messier from here.